How do you make a woman feel desire for you when she barely seems interested at all? This is a question many men quietly ask themselves. You meet someone who seems amazing. You try to be respectful, attentive, thoughtful, yet the more effort you show, the colder the interaction feels. She replies less, she pulls away. Eventually, you hear the familiar line, "You're a really nice guy, but..." Most men interpret this as rejection of who they are, but often the real issue is much simpler. You may not be doing the wrong things, you're just doing them in the wrong order. Attraction doesn't grow the way logic suggests it should. You can't build it step by step like assembling furniture. It's emotional, instinctive, and often unpredictable. I once heard a story from a man named Daniel that perfectly explains this. Daniel met a woman at a mutual friend's birthday dinner. She was funny, intelligent, and easy to talk to. During the evening, he did everything he believed was right. He complimented her, asked thoughtful questions, and made sure she felt comfortable. The conversation was pleasant, but something felt flat. Later that week, he texted her, hoping to continue the connection. Her replies were polite, but distant. Eventually, the conversation faded away. Months later, Daniel ran into her again at another gathering. This time, something had changed. Instead of trying to impress her, he simply enjoyed the night. He laughed with friends, moved through the room confidently, and didn't focus all his attention on her. Ironically, she approached him first. The conversation flowed easily, and she seemed much more interested. What changed? Not Daniel's personality, not his appearance. What changed was the energy he brought into the interaction. To understand why that shift matters, it helps to look at how attraction often works psychologically. The human brain relies on shortcuts when evaluating people. Instead of carefully analyzing every trait, it reads subtle signals: confidence, emotional stability, independence, curiosity. These signals shape attraction far more quickly than words ever could. Let's walk through several triggers that influence attraction, along with real-life examples that show how they play out. The first trigger is presence. Presence has little to do with physical appearance. It's about how comfortable someone feels in their own space. When a person walks into a room calmly, moves naturally, and isn't searching for approval, people notice. A friend of mine named Marcus once told me about an experience at a networking event. The room was full of professionals trying to impress each other. Many were talking loudly or trying to dominate conversations. But one man stood out simply because he wasn't doing any of that. He spoke calmly, listened attentively, and moved through the room without rushing. People gravitated toward him. Later, Marcus discovered the man wasn't the richest or most powerful person there. He simply carried himself with ease. That sense of grounded confidence made others curious. The same dynamic appears in dating. When a man seems comfortable in his own skin, he sends a subtle signal. "I'm already good with myself." That kind of energy often feels magnetic because it's rare. The second trigger is playful challenge. Many men believe they must agree with everything a woman says to keep the peace. But constant agreement removes energy from the interaction. Attraction often grows from contrast and playful tension. Consider a small example. A woman once told a man during a coffee date that she loved waking up at 5 in the morning to run. Instead of responding with predictable admiration, he smiled and said, "5 in the morning? I'm convinced only superheroes and bakers wake up that early." She laughed. The comment wasn't disrespectful. It simply introduced light teasing. That playful push created energy in the conversation. It's something important: confidence. It shows you're comfortable expressing your perspective rather than performing for approval. The third trigger is balanced attention. One of the most common mistakes people make early in dating is giving too much attention too quickly. Immediate replies, constant messaging, and rearranging schedules may seem considerate, but they can unintentionally reduce intrigue. There's a story about a woman named Olivia who went on 2 dates with different men in the same month. The first man texted her constantly. Good morning messages, midday check-ins, and late-night conversations. At first, she appreciated the attention, but soon it began to feel overwhelming. It seemed as though his entire routine revolved around her responses. The second man communicated differently. He was warm and engaging when they spoke, but he also had his own life. Work projects, friends, hobbies. Sometimes he replied quickly, sometimes later in the evening. He wasn't playing games. He was simply busy living his life. Olivia admitted later that she found herself thinking about him more often, not because he tried harder, but because his attention felt valuable. This illustrates an important principle. People are naturally drawn toward individuals who have direction and purpose beyond the relationship itself. The fourth trigger is intentional listening. Listening may sound obvious, but genuine listening is surprisingly rare. Many conversations involve people waiting for their turn to speak, rather than absorbing what the other person says. A colleague once shared a story about her husband that demonstrates this perfectly. On one of their early dates, she mentioned loving a small bookstore in another city where she used to live. Months later, during a weekend trip, he casually walked her into a similar bookstore he had discovered. "You once told me places like this make you happy," he said. It wasn't an extravagant gesture, but it showed he had listened carefully enough to remember something meaningful. That moment left a lasting impression because it communicated attention and care. When someone recalls small details from earlier conversations, it signals presence. It shows the other person they were truly heard. The fifth trigger is honest vulnerability. Many people believe they must appear flawless to be attractive. In reality, perfection often creates distance. What builds connection is honesty combined with emotional stability. I once interviewed a couple who had been married for more than 20 years. The wife described the moment she realized her husband was different from other men she had dated. During one conversation, he admitted that he had struggled with self-doubt early in his career. But he didn't present the story as a complaint or an excuse. Instead, he explained how the experience motivated him to grow. That openness made him relatable. It showed he was human, yet grounded enough to reflect on his challenges. Vulnerability delivered with confidence creates trust, because it feels genuine rather than rehearsed. The sixth trigger involves respectful physical connection. Human beings are wired to respond to touch. Studies show that brief, appropriate contact, such as a light touch on the arm during laughter, can increase feelings of warmth and familiarity. The brain releases oxytocin, a hormone associated with bonding and trust. One couple I know recalls their first date vividly because of a small moment during a walk through the park. As they crossed a busy street, he gently placed his hand on her shoulder to guide her forward. It lasted only a second, but she later said it felt natural and reassuring. That brief contact created a sense of comfort that words alone could not. Of course, timing and respect are crucial. Physical gestures should always feel welcome and appropriate. When they occur naturally, they reinforce emotional connection. The final trigger is something psychologists often describe as controlled unpredictability. The human brain responds strongly to novelty and surprise. When experiences are slightly unpredictable, they trigger the release of dopamine, the neurotransmitter linked to curiosity and motivation. This doesn't mean being inconsistent or unreliable, it simply means avoiding rigid routines. Imagine two different dating experiences. In the first, every interaction follows the same pattern. Same type of restaurant, same conversation topics, same schedule. Over time, the experience becomes predictable. In the second scenario, the person occasionally introduces something unexpected. A spontaneous walk after dinner, a surprise stop at a small art exhibit, a playful challenge to try a new activity. These moments break the pattern and create memorable experiences. I once heard a woman describe a date where the man suddenly suggested they watch the sunset from a hill overlooking the city. They grabbed takeaway coffee and sat there talking for an hour. She later said that moment stood out because it felt spontaneous and genuine. The brain loves these small bursts of novelty because they make experiences feel alive. When you combine all these elements, presence, playful challenge, balanced attention, listening, vulnerability, physical warmth, and occasional unpredictability, you create an environment where attraction can grow naturally. None of these triggers involve manipulation or elaborate techniques. They simply reflect emotional intelligence and self-awareness. Perhaps the most important lesson is this: attraction rarely appears when someone tries to force it. It develops when two people feel comfortable, curious, and engaged with each other. The goal isn't to convince someone to like you. The goal is to create interactions where genuine interest has space to emerge. When that happens, the dynamic shifts completely. You stop chasing approval and start sharing experiences. And that's often the moment when attraction begins to build on its own.